Have you ever tried to bring peace to your own family, only to become the enemy? Because that is exactly what happened to me. My name is Eleanor, and for most of my life I believed that family was the one place where intentions mattered more than misunderstandings. A place where people knew your heart. A place where even when mistakes were made, love would eventually smooth things over. But that belief was shattered the day my own brother humiliated me in front of our entire family. Not because I did something wrong, but because I tried to stop a fight. And in that moment, the brother I grew up protecting turned me into the villain. My elder brother, Dennis, is a man who has already lived through a long and meaningful chapter of service and now enjoys the quiet rewards of retirement. After dedicating decades to his career with discipline and integrity, he carries the calm confidence of someone who has seen much and accomplished even more. His demeanor is thoughtful and measured, often tinged with a soft nostalgia when he reflects on the years he spent working, leading, and providing for his family. Retirement has not slowed his mind. Instead, it has given him space to breathe. Now he spends more time with family, tending to small hobbies, offering guidance to younger relatives, and occasionally sharing the lessons life has taught him. Stability, tradition, and wisdom matter deeply to him. There is a quiet authority about him, one that never demands attention, yet naturally commands respect. He is not a man who needs to raise his voice to be heard. His presence alone carries weight. The afternoon sun filters through the half-open blinds, casting long golden stripes across the living room. On the worn leather sofa sits Dennis, his posture relaxed yet precise, a lifetime of discipline still visible in the way he carries himself. His hair, streaked with silver, frames a face gently lined with experience. Those lines are not marks of age alone. They are the subtle signatures of decades spent making difficult decisions, carrying responsibilities, and standing firm through life's pressures. His hands rest calmly in his lap, large and steady, the faint roughness of his palms hinting at years of hard work and dedication. Retirement may have softened some of the sharper edges of his routine, but it has not changed the core of who he is. He still radiates the same calm authority and thoughtful presence that defined him throughout his career. Occasionally, he glances at the clock on the wall, not with urgency, but almost reflectively, as if quietly measuring the rhythm of life now that time finally moves at his own pace. My younger brother, Michael, however, lives in a very different chapter of life. While Dennis enjoys the stillness of retirement, the younger one remains fully immersed in the demanding current of his career. He is still climbing, still proving himself, still navigating the daily challenges that come with responsibility and ambition. His world moves faster, filled with deadlines, decisions, and the constant pressure to perform. Where Dennis carries the calm of a completed journey, the younger one carries the fire of a journey still unfolding. His life is structured around duty and purpose. He thrives on solving problems, managing responsibilities, and staying one step ahead of the next challenge. There is an intensity in him, a sharp focus that comes from being actively engaged in work and family life. Every day presents new obstacles to overcome, and he meets them with resilience and determination. He lives more in the present moment, energized by the momentum of action. His schedule is full, his thoughts always moving toward the next task, the next responsibility, the next goal to achieve. In contrast to the quiet stillness of Dennis on the sofa, Michael stands near the window, partially silhouetted by the warm afternoon light. The sunlight outlines his figure as he reviews a stack of documents in his hands, occasionally jotting down notes before glancing at his phone to check incoming messages from work. His movements carry a purposeful urgency. There is a subtle tension in his shoulders, a reminder that life in active service rarely slows down. Responsibilities wait for no one, and he knows it. His eyes are sharp and alert, constantly assessing, planning, anticipating the next step. Even when he pauses for a moment, it is clear that his mind is still working, still calculating the many small decisions that shape his day. Yet every now and then, his gaze drifts across the room toward Dennis, our elder brother. And in that brief glance there is something deeper than simple observation. There is respect. There is admiration. Perhaps even a quiet curiosity about what it must feel like to reach that stage of life where the long race has already been run. The gentle rivalry that exists between brothers is there too, though softened by affection and shared history. Both of them grew up under the watchful guidance of our late father, a man whose expectations shaped the character of his sons. Each of them, in his own way, carries the weight of that legacy. For Michael, that legacy is still something he is striving toward. For Dennis, it is something he has already honored. Across the room, the contrast between the two men is striking. One sits anchored in the quiet mastery that comes with experience, a man who has completed the most demanding chapters of his life and now observes the world with patient wisdom. The other stands energized by purpose, driven by ambition, still fully engaged in the challenges of work and responsibility. One represents reflection. The other represents momentum. Yet despite these differences, there is an invisible thread that binds them together. A shared childhood. A lifetime of memories. The silent understanding that only siblings carry. No matter how different their lives may become, no matter how far their paths may diverge, one truth remains unchanged. They are brothers. And family, above all else, comes first. A family built on respect. I grew up in a family where respect was the foundation of everything. There were 3 of us siblings, Dennis, Michael, and me. Michael was the youngest. Calm, thoughtful, steady. The kind of man people trusted immediately. Dennis was the eldest, charming, emotional, sometimes impulsive, but with a good heart. And then there was me, the middle child who somehow became the peacemaker. Whenever disagreements happened growing up, our parents handled them in a very traditional way. No shouting. No silent grudges. Instead, everyone sat down together until the matter was resolved. Our father used to say something that stayed with me all my life. Family arguments are like small fires. If you put them out quickly, they warm you. If you ignore them, they burn the house down. For many years, our family lived by that principle. And it worked. Until new people entered the family. Sandra, the foundation of the family. 30 years ago, my youngest brother Michael married Sandra. I still remember the day she first walked into our family home as a young bride. She was elegant but humble, confident but respectful. Sandra had a quiet strength about her, the kind of presence that didn't demand attention but naturally earned it. Over the years, she built an extraordinary life. She rose through the ranks of a multinational oil-producing company until she became a vice president, an achievement that required intelligence, discipline, and leadership. Yet despite her professional success, Sandra never acted superior within the family. If anything, she became one of its pillars. During difficult financial years, she helped quietly. During family gatherings, she organized everything. When our parents became elderly, she treated them with deep respect and care. 30 years later, Sandra wasn't just Michael's wife. She was part of the family's foundation. Everyone trusted her. Everyone respected her. When Vanessa entered the family, 4 years ago, Dennis remarried. And that was when Vanessa entered our lives. From the moment Dennis introduced her, we welcomed her warmly. That is how our family operates. When someone marries into the family, they are received with open arms. Vanessa was beautiful, stylish, and very expressive. She had a strong personality, very outspoken, very emotional, and sometimes very sensitive to things that were never intended to offend her. At first, we assumed she simply needed time to adjust. Joining a new family can be overwhelming. But slowly, subtle tensions began appearing. Vanessa carefully maintained an image of elegance and sophistication. She dressed impeccably, spoke confidently, and always presented herself as someone who valued refinement. But beneath that polished surface was something else. Insecurity. Unlike Sandra, Vanessa did not have a career or professional identity of her own. While Sandra's life was filled with achievements and responsibilities, Vanessa's world revolved almost entirely around appearances, social positioning, and household influence. And that difference slowly became the root of an invisible rivalry. Sandra's confidence, Sandra's success, Sandra's effortless charm. Each compliment Sandra received seemed to ignite a silent comparison inside Vanessa's mind. Why her? Why not me? Once, during a conversation, Vanessa even said quietly, "My spirit does not flow with Sandra's spirit." At the time, I dismissed the comment as harmless frustration. But looking back now, I realize it was a warning. Small tensions begin. At first, the conflicts were small. Little comments during gatherings, cold smiles, subtle disagreements about trivial things. Nothing explosive, just a quiet tension that could be felt in the air. Sandra usually ignored it. She was too mature to engage in petty competition. But Vanessa seemed increasingly irritated by Sandra's calm confidence. And Dennis, blinded by love for his new wife, often overlooked the subtle provocations. I watched it all unfold over the years, hoping the tension would eventually fade. Instead, it grew, until one day it exploded. The family gathering. The incident happened during a large family gathering at Michael and Sandra's country home. Many relatives were visiting, cousins, nephews, nieces, old family friends. It was supposed to be a joyful evening. The house was full of laughter. Children were running around the compound. Music played softly from the living room. The smell of roasted chicken and fresh bread filled the air. For the first few hours, everything was peaceful. Then I heard it. Raised voices. From the kitchen. At first, nobody reacted. Family members sometimes argue about small things during gatherings. But the voices grew louder, sharper, angrier. Someone whispered nervously, "It's the two wives arguing." The atmosphere in the living room immediately changed. People looked at each other uneasily. Nobody enjoys witnessing family conflict, especially in front of relatives. I stood up and walked toward the kitchen. The argument. When I reached the doorway, I froze. Sandra stood near the counter, holding a tray of drinks. Her arms were crossed and her expression was tense. Across from her stood Vanessa, her face flushed with anger. Her finger was pointed accusingly. "You don't understand anything," Vanessa shouted. Sandra responded sharply. "I've been in this family for decades. I know how things work here." The tension in the room was thick. I knew if someone didn't step in, the situation could escalate into something far worse. So I walked forward slowly. Not to take sides. Not to accuse anyone. Only to calm things down. "Sisters," I said gently, raising my hands. "Please, let's calm down. We are family. There is no need to fight in front of everyone." For a brief moment, silence filled the kitchen. Then footsteps echoed behind us. Dennis had arrived. Dennis walks in. Dennis looked from one woman to the other. His expression hardened immediately. "What is happening here?" he demanded. Before anyone else could speak, Vanessa rushed forward. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Sandra was disrespecting me. Sandra called me a name," she said. "She ignored me completely when I asked her to help." Sandra looked stunned. "That is not true. She disrespected our mom," Sandra replied firmly. I raised my hand calmly. "Dennis," I said carefully, "let's listen to both sides first." But Dennis didn't want to listen. His protective instincts had already taken over. And unfortunately, they were pointed in the wrong direction. The moment everything changed, Dennis turned towards Sandra. His voice suddenly rose. "You are always creating problems. he snapped. The words echoed through the house. Conversation in the living room stopped instantly. Relatives began gathering near the kitchen entrance. Sandra looked shocked. After 30 years in the family, no one had ever spoken to her like that. My chest tightened. This wasn't fair. So I spoke again. Dennis, I said calmly, let's hear both sides before blaming anyone. That one sentence changed everything. Dennis turned toward me slowly. The anger in his eyes startled me. Stay out of this, he snapped. But I couldn't remain silent. Not when someone was being blamed unfairly. I'm only trying to make peace, I said. That seemed to ignite something inside him. Suddenly, his voice exploded across the room. You always interfere in things that don't concern you. The humiliation that followed is something I will never forget. Public humiliation. Dennis began raising his voice uncontrollable. Accusing me. Mocking me. You think you're the family referee, he said loudly. Why do you always act like you know what's best for everyone? Relatives stood frozen at the doorway. Watching. Listening. Vanessa stood behind Dennis, silent. But I noticed something in her expression. A faint smile. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. I had only stepped in to stop a fight, but now I had become the enemy. For a moment, I considered defending myself. But something stopped me. I remembered the values our parents had taught us. Sometimes dignity means refusing to fight back. So I stayed silent. And I stepped away. The quiet aftermath. The gathering continued awkwardly after that. Conversations resumed. But the atmosphere had changed. People spoke in whispers. I kept my distance for the rest of the evening. Sandra approached me quietly once. Thank you, she said softly. Her eyes were tired. I know you were trying to help. I simply nodded. But inside, my heart was heavy. I had never felt so humiliated in my life. And worst of all, it came from my own brother, Dennis, the unexpected witness. Later that evening, as guests began leaving, my cousin Esther approached me privately. She looked hesitant. Eleanor, she said quietly, can I talk to you for a moment? We stepped outside onto the veranda. The night air was cool. Esther lowered her voice. I saw everything, she said. My heart skipped. Everything. She nodded. I was in the hallway before the argument started. What happened? I asked. Esther took a deep breath. Vanessa started it. The truth. According to Esther, the conflict began very differently from what Dennis believed. Vanessa had entered the kitchen while Sandra was preparing drinks. She began criticizing how things were being organized for the gathering. At first, Sandra ignored the comments. But Vanessa continued. Small insults disguised as suggestions. Then came the final remark. You may have been here 30 years, Vanessa said, but times have changed. Maybe you should let younger people handle things. That was when Sandra finally responded. And the argument began. By the time Dennis walked in, he had only heard the last part. She called me name, but Vanessa did not say why she called her name. Mom, in trying to stop them, was disrespected by Vanessa, which infuriated Sandra. The part that made Sandra look like the aggressor. Quiet conversations. Over the next hour, Esther spoke discreetly with several other cousins who had witnessed parts of the argument. Each one confirmed the same story. Vanessa had provoked the situation. Slowly, the truth began spreading quietly among the relatives. No dramatic confrontation. No public accusations. Just quiet understanding. I remained calm. I didn't want to escalate the conflict further, but I knew eventually the truth would reach Dennis. The private conversation. The next afternoon, I decided to speak with Vanessa privately. She was sitting in the garden when I arrived. Her posture stiffened when she saw me. "I think we should talk," I said gently. She crossed her arms defensively. "About what?" "About yesterday. Dennis has blocked everyone's phone lines." Her eyes narrowed. "I did nothing wrong." I sat down calmly. "Several people saw how the argument started," I said quietly. Her expression changed slightly. "You provoked Sandra," I continued, "and Dennis misunderstood the situation." For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she looked down. "I didn't think it would get that big," she murmured. I studied her carefully. "Vanessa," I said softly, "families survive on trust. If we let jealousy divide us, everyone loses." Her shoulders sagged. For the first time, she looked vulnerable. "I just feel like I'm always being compared to her," she admitted. I nodded. "That comparison exists only in your mind." The reckoning. That evening, Dennis came to see me. His expression was different from the day before. Less angry, more uncertain. "I heard something today," he said slowly. I remained silent. "Several cousins told me how the argument really started." He sighed heavily. "I should have listened before shouting." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Dennis said something I never expected. "I'm sorry." The apology. The following weekend, our family gathered again. This time the atmosphere was cautious. Dennis stood up during dinner. He cleared his throat nervously. "I owe Eleanor an apology," he said. The room fell silent. "I humiliated her last week when she was only trying to help." He turned toward me. "I'm sorry, sister." Vanessa also stood. She looked embarrassed. "I provoked the argument," she admitted quietly. Sandra smiled gently. "It's time we move forward," she said. The lesson I learned. The tension slowly dissolved. Conversations resumed. Laughter returned. But something inside me had changed. Because that experience taught me something important. Sometimes the person who tries to stop a war becomes the first casualty of it. But the truth has a way of revealing itself eventually. And when it does, silence becomes louder than accusations. That day my brother, Dennis, learned a lesson about listening before judging. And I learned something too. Peace is not always appreciated in the moment, but it is always worth protecting, even when it costs you your pride. At the end, it was revealed that several cousins witnessed the real cause of the conflict. My senior brother's wife provoked the argument intentionally. The truth spreads through the family. My brother eventually realizes he publicly humiliated the only person trying to make peace. That day my brother turned me into the villain. But when the truth finally came out, everyone in the family saw who had really been trying to protect the peace. He humiliated me, my own brother. When I tried to help, the truth came out, and he became ashamed.